up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to all things you, new and true. Welcome back to True Life. I pray that you're blessed and that you're doing well. Let's get right into it. So today I'm just going to give my testimony just about how God basically delivered me from sex addiction and drug and alcohol abuse. When I was younger, I, of course, have told you this in multiple videos that I struggled with low self-esteem due to like bullying and just not being able to fit in. And unfortunately, I had this dual diagnosis of bipolar 1 disorder, which I also explained in other videos. And a lot of the major symptoms of my bipolar 1 disorder was just heightened sexuality and impulsivity. So I would act in ways that I didn't necessarily have any control over. And it was very sad and very scary. So me having this mental health issue and having low self-esteem was just a concoction that was a recipe for disaster. And I remember that I was just drinking and having sex just to make myself feel better, to make myself feel like I had control over my life, to make myself feel like I actually fit in, to make myself feel like I was loved. Like if a guy said that I was cute, I slept with him because I just thought that that was the way that I felt validated. That was the way that I was just like, you know, like, see, like I am a boss chick. And the way that the world views sex was the way that I viewed it as well. And I adopted the world view of feeling like a boss by collecting bodies and having a body count that was just way too high. I just wasn't happy. It was because I didn't address a lot of the childhood trauma that I had gone through. So I tried to basically mask those feelings with a bottle of Hennessy or a bottle of tequila or sleeping with some random guy that I met in a bar. And for a long time, I was just going to church and sleeping around and going to church and having sex and going to church and drinking alcohol. And as much as the church was preaching about giving God control over your life, I felt that because I had lost control over my life once before as a child with people bullying me and experiencing sexual abuse, that I would never let anybody have control over my life again. So I wanted that control over my life by drinking and having sex. But the funny thing is, the more I thought I could control my life with those things, the more out of control I felt, and the more chaotic I felt, and the more unhappy I felt. I just went through this period of agnosticism because I just felt like God wasn't real. I only knew the God of my parents. I only knew the God of a certain denomination that I was associated with. And I didn't know who God was for myself. And I felt like the church at the time wasn't necessarily discussing mental health issues and how that could drive your lust. And they would just talk about how lust was a sin and how masturbation was a sin and how promiscuity was a sin. And they didn't really address the root issue. And I felt like a unicorn in my own church, and I just felt miserable. I just was not looking for God. I wasn't searching for him. And if anything, I had put God in my back pocket and I didn't want to hear anything about him. But God never stopped chasing after me. It's really funny. I remember there was a point in my life where I had met this guy that was the perfect blend of everything that I needed. He loved to drink and smoke and have sex just as much as I did. And I remember one day I was in bed with this man right next to me, who wasn't mine. And he didn't really care anything about God or church, so he was the perfect person for me. And I remember I was sleeping in bed with him, and I had this outer body experience where I was still asleep. The spirit me kind of rose up and looked down at the me that was sleeping. And I remember I looked at myself and I was just like, she's dead. She's not waking up. Like, she's not coming back. She's nothing. She's a goner. And I remember I was just very angry and sad that I couldn't wake up the me that was sleeping. And I realized that outer body experience was literally God showing me that I was spiritually dead and just dead as a person, that I was just existing. After that day, God slowly did this thing where I started becoming annoyed with the guy that I was sleeping with. that everything that he did irritated me. Like the way he ate, the way he would drink, the way he would swallow his food, it annoyed me. And it was as if God was slowly pulling the rose-colored glasses off my eyes, or pulling the scales off my eyes. So I became so annoyed with this guy that eventually I just left him. So the funny thing is, I was annoyed with church, so I didn't care about church and I didn't go to church. And then I was also annoyed with sleeping around with this guy that I thought was the perfect guy for me. So I was in this space of a spiritual limbo in a sense, and I just didn't talk to anybody. And I was by myself, and I would smoke in my room and I would drink in my room, and I didn't want anybody to really deal with me. And then one day, I'm gonna cry. One day, I saw a friend by the name of Adrian Grant. Her name is Adrian Grant now, but her name was Adrian Rogers before. I saw her on Facebook, and I remember seeing her and being like, man, like that's what I want to look like. And she had gone to this church called Fresh Start Christian Center. And me and her used to hang out together when I was like 13 years old and she was like 11 or 12. And I realized like I missed her, and I was just in this room going through these issues by myself. And I realized like I didn't really have anybody to help me. And I saw her and I was just like I gotta reach out. So I remember when I was still unhealthy and very toxic, I had broken off my friendship with her. And I wasn't sure if she was gonna speak to me ever again. So I reached out to her. And I was like, hey, like I see you on Facebook, like how are you doing? And she was like, yeah, like I'm doing good. And she was like super sweet and bright and contrite. And I was so glad that she was kind to me. And she had told me about this church, Fresh Start Christian Center. And me and her linked up and we went to Red Lobster, and it was just good to laugh with her. And it was good to see her face. And she reminded me of a time when I was still innocent and I was still happy and joyous. And looking at her at the time when we went out to eat, it reminded me of like I just wanted to be happy again. I wanted to be happy and I wanted to be healthy. Sorry. So I went to Fresh Start Christian Center and I went to this workshop called the Hunger Games. I remember just the presence of God, the actual presence of God just being at Fresh Start Christian Center. And it was just a workshop and it was talking about hunger. And the funny thing is, I was feeding my hunger for satisfaction and happiness with sex and drugs. I remember I just fell on my knees at this church because it was like God was just calling me and calling me. And so I decided, I was going to switch churches. I wanted to know who God was, who this God that we preach about was. So I continued to go to Fresh Start Christian Center, and I remember Pastor Coleman touched my arm and he had a counseling session with me and he prayed over me and he said, oh, your life is never going to be the same. And I was just like, yeah, it's nice. And I just went through the motions. But the funny thing is, as much as I wanted to go back to the world of drinking and having sex, it just wouldn't satisfy me. Like I would try to dabble in it and go to Fresh Start and it just would not satisfy me. So I realized, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try this God thing for real. And I remember that as I started to starve this need for sex and alcohol, I felt like something needed to take that place because I was like having like these withdrawal symptoms. And so I remember just asking Adrian, can I just sit in the church? Like, can I just sit in there so I could just listen to the choir rehearsal on Tuesday or the praise team rehearsal? Can I just sit in the back of the church? And I remember just sitting there and just wanting to just be around so that I wouldn't get into something stupid. And I was just continuing to take medication for my mental health issue, and going to therapy, and just going to church, going to Fresh Start. And it was never a moment where God just snatched the taste of alcohol from my mouth. But slowly he just started to develop this thing in me. He showed me that my happiness wouldn't come from Hennessy, or that my satisfaction would not come from sex. And so I just continued to go to Fresh Start. And, throughout the time that I was there, I slowly but surely just developed this need for peace and reassurance. And I realized that I wouldn't find that in life while I was still drinking and drugging and having sex. And slowly, it's a long process. And still now, I fight back those thoughts that I need alcohol, I need sex. Like, God developed this sense of peace in me that the world could not give. That the more I starved the need for sex and sexual promiscuity, that the more he fed me his goodness and his grace and his mercy. And I realized that all the chaos would cease whenever I was in the presence of God. And that for a long time, I relied heavily on my brothers and sisters in Christ. Like, I leaned on them heavy, and I called Adrian a million times. And I realized that is what I needed to detox myself from drugs and to starve myself from sex. And so for anybody that struggles with sex addiction or drug and alcohol abuse, it doesn't come from this one moment where it's I'm okay, I'm free. But it comes from this constant process of you starving, making the choice to starve those things that are behind you, starve those things that pull you down, and feed your peace by looking to God and learning who God is for yourself. And so I just really want to thank Adrian Grant and Ashley Britton and Pastor Coleman and Marissa Moffitt and everybody that took a part in that beginning stage of me developing and becoming who I am right now, and praying with me while I was still addicted, and praying with me while I was still struggling with my medication. That's a whole other story within itself. But slowly but surely, God got me over that need to have sex and that need to sleep. God showed me that I can literally just be still. And the funny thing is, before that, I was always I always need to do something. But with time, God just kept me still. He just kept me just at peace and at ease. And even now I'm learning to trust him more and more. And even now I realize no satisfaction can come from anything that rests between your thighs. Satisfaction comes from God. Satisfaction does not come from what rests between your thighs. And that's for both men and women. That if you're struggling with this, you can go to your AA meetings. They help. I went to them. You can go to therapy. It helps. I go to therapy. But if you really don't have that component of just knowing who God is for yourself and having that support system of people who can pray you through and really speak life into you while you're literally living dead, it really won't work out. So it's a process. I know that you want to just kind of get over it immediately, but it is a process, and God will literally show you who you are. That your satisfaction doesn't need to come from sex, and that your worth and your value doesn't lie in the bed. It doesn't lie in between the sheets, but it lies at the feet of God. So I pray that this blessed you. I pray that if you know someone that is going through this same issue, that struggles with promiscuity and struggles with addiction of any sort, that you'll pray with them, that you'll reach out to them, that you'll be that helping hand, that you'll be there for them. And also just for people that are going through this yourself, you're not alone. This is not taboo. I'm right there with you. I'm in the struggle with you. I know what that feels like. You are going to be okay. With God, all things are possible. He can and will do it for you because he has delivered me. He's delivered me from my torment. He's delivered me from my abuse. He's delivered me from my addiction. And it's only by God's grace and by him calling me and looking and seeking after me, even when I wasn't looking or checking for him. So you don't even have to worry about being like, oh, like I'm not even looking for the Lord. Like he will hunt you down. And that's just, it's amazing how much God's love reaches out to you. Like I know we sing that in a song, like it reaches to me, like you are my strength, it reaches to me, but like his love reaches so far out. My name is Danielle Henderson, and I am a blessed, loved, and delivered woman of God, and I'm living a true life. Don't forget to stay you, stay new, and stay true. Until next time, peace.